my entire adult life.
Yeah, nor have I, and I watched it last night, and how horrifying.
Yeah.
abysmal.
When I go home and I see things, these commercials are awful.
Check, check, 1, 2. Hey, everyone. Welcome to an episode of Fallon's Daily Toast. Let's just double check, make sure this
I
is
was really
happening.
confused for a second.
No, we're live.
No, that's
We're
fine.
live on Facebook, and not quite yet on Channel 3, but good evening, everyone. We're at Somerville Media Center in the heart of Union Square, Somerville, Massachusetts. It is May 18th, approximately 6 o'clock. And joining me are not only a board member from Boston Cyclists Union, but also embarking on a really wonderful trip, and we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about that in this next hour. Joining me, Remy Morrison and Matt Cheeg. Thank you both so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Fallon.
Yeah, of course. This
Hi.
is great. Hi. So to give you some context, Remy and I are a part of we work in the same community, and so when I discovered that you were embarking on this big trip, and raising money and raising awareness, I thought it really appropriate to be on the show.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. And to give everyone some an idea, let me read the mission. We're helping Bostonians lead healthier lives by promoting the everyday use of the bicycle for transportation. Among other things, we repair bikes, educate new riders, and organize neighborhood residents who would like to voice support for friendlier street designs, bike paths, and public spaces. And so that's Boston Cyclists Union. They just a beautiful website. Please visit it. New website, bostoncyclistsunion.org. And you can visit that and learn more and get involved and find out all about the campaigns and programs. So talk a little bit about your time with the Boston Cyclists Union.
Sure, actually that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
So I was actually on the founding board of the Boston Cyclists Union. It started back in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, it actually been a grassroots movement that had been part of a bike to market program, where bike maintenance people, repairers, would be at farmers markets and help people repair their bikes, teach them about repairing bikes, how to maintain their bikes, so on and so forth. And then it blew up into a full-blown union. And that started only in Boston neighborhoods at first, and now it has expanded over the past 7-8 years to a much bigger union that encompasses Brookline, Somerville, Cambridge. It's a full-blown nonprofit that actually was the main mission of our first year of existence, was trying to get to that point, learning how to do that and making it into a fully established part of the community. I was on the first board for the first year and some change, and then I was just a member for years after that, and I've had the pleasure of watching it grow. And I rejoined the board approximately a year and a half ago.
Wow.
It's has a very different flavor, much more official, much more professional, many more connections in the city. Our executive director, Becca Wolfson, is doing a fantastic job at forming those connections and forging new relationships, and wielding our social influence in the political sphere of Boston and the cities surrounding.
It's so important. And talk a bit about why the importance of cycling and why everybody should put their cars away forever and pick up a bike.
I guess that depends on the person. We want to promote bicycling of all kinds for all reasons. Transportation, of course, commuting, getting to and fro work and doing your errands. Recreation, of course, even transporting families and helping to build communities. So it's pretty much all across the board. We are trying to, we have been successfully getting bike lanes in place, protected, painting, sharrows. Well, sharrows are a more controversial issue, but protected bike lanes. And
What are sharrows?
Sharrows are those little chevroned paintings you see with the little bike symbol.
Oh,
symbol
yes,
and
yes.
That just try to remind riders or drivers that there are bicyclists that also use the road. Our focus is more on protected bike lanes, bike lanes with pegs, the ballisters.
Bollards.
Bollards, thank you. That are designating a lane very specifically for bikers and making sure that they have a very safe space to ride. We have helped get many, many miles of approximately 4 to 5, I believe, bike lanes added to the city over the past few years. One of the main problems that we're having right now is connecting them to make a more connected network throughout the city. So we're focusing on lots of areas that we haven't been in the past, Roxbury, Dorchester in particular, and trying to connect major thoroughways through the city.
Well, beautiful. And for those tuning in on Channel 3 at home in Somerville tonight, joining me is Romy Morrison and Matt Sheegan. They are board member and of the Boston Cyclist Union. And there's a big journey coming up. It's a fundraiser. You're raising money, but it's also a long journey. And talk a little bit about that. It's both, yes. Talk about how that came to be. Is this something you do every year?
This is going to be the third year.
Third year.
It started 2 years ago. It was the brainchild of one of our most prolific and rambunctious volunteers, John Ramos. He almost planned the entire thing from scratch himself. I wish I could tell you where he got the idea from.
Oh, I can get a little background about
Fantastic.
Yeah, give a little background.
A bunch of people in the Boston Cyclist Union community have done Climate Ride, which is another nonprofit ride that goes from a couple different destinations. Bar Harbor, Maine to Boston is one more prominent route, but the Climate Ride fundraiser is interesting because the funds you raise for your cause are split 50-50 or maybe even less for the cause you are raising for and then the rest goes to the Climate Ride. And so some of the people, John Ramos I think being one of them, who have participated in this thought we could do a lot better by doing it ourselves and getting a lot better profit margins on the fundraiser instead of kind of piggybacking on this other one.
And the minimum for Climate Ride is in the thousands, I believe now, right?
It's like 2,000 or 3,000, which is a little less approachable than what we've been targeting.
Little prohibitive. I believe the first year that we did it, was it 1,000 for us?
I think 1,250 maybe.
Okay, 1,250. So much better than multi-thousands. And we had 14 riders that first year who I think we raised a total of about 30,000. So there was an on average above the minimum goal that we were looking for per rider. We've expanded it last year from the 14 riders that we had the original year to 30. And this year we have 33, I believe 3 of which are scholarship riders.
Oh.
So to make it a little bit more accessible and to make sure that we had a more inclusive ridership, we made 3 of the slots half. I think they had to raise half as much, and the other half was being covered for by scholarships, some of which came from grants that the BCUs received.
That's great.
So this is now our biggest fundraiser, BCU's biggest fundraiser of the year, and it's expected, we are aiming for $56,000 this year. I think that we're on track to get about over 60,000. We were just looking at some of the math last night, so 65,000, which allows us to do our jobs that much better. Actually, it allows us to give a few people jobs to then help us do what we do that much better. Because we only have we only used to have 2 full-time employees. Now we have 2 full-time and I believe a couple part-time, and we're trying to expand that to maybe up to 3 to 4 full-time employees.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we have some pictures here, and we'll show them to the folks online. Let me just make sure this is out of the way.
I just realized that we didn't even say where the ride goes to.
Well, and we're going to talk about that. I'm interested to know a great deal more about the ride, in fact. And that's something you can continue on talking about. How long is it? Where do you begin? Where do you end? And also, too, just, what's the purpose? Where's the money going to go toward? Like, what's a year look like for the Boston Cyclists Union, as far as lobbying goes, making yourselves present at meetings in town and just, getting in touch, making sure that legislators, representatives are, up to date with the latest as far as, traffic goes. I've seen a great deal of improvements done in Union Square, making it just a great deal more safer. We've all lost people in bicycling accidents, and it can be pretty treacherous here in this dense city, people zipping around. So yeah, talk a bit more while I go through the photographs.
Sure, actually, maybe you can talk a little bit more about the ride itself, but I just wanted to point out one quick thing.
Sure.
When it comes to losing people in bike accidents, I think we typically say bike crashes to make that distinction a little bit more clear, as it's not always an accident, but yeah.
Yeah, as far as the ride itself, the first year we did it, it was called MB400, which stood for Montreal to Boston, 400 miles, which is the length of the ride. That year we drove up in passenger vans along with our stuff,
Yeah.
and rode back from Montreal, and it was a delight. And after last year and reviewing some of the logistics, we made the decision to reverse the route and go from Boston to Montreal. A large driving factor for that was the ability to spend more time in Montreal. The first year we left immediately the next day after arriving and came down. Last year and this year we get 2 full days to hang out and explore Montreal, which really enables the people who participate some time to see how much better their bicycling infrastructure is than ours.
Yeah.
And that was a large deciding factor for the destination, was the ability to share, what Canada and what Montreal is able to do with their resources in their city and their political capital to build safe infrastructure everywhere. And it's just a real pleasure riding around their city, getting from A to B and not feeling nearly as threatened as you might here. As far as the ride goes, we start in government or City Plaza,
Yeah,
by
Government Center.
Government Center,
Yeah.
on Saturday, next Saturday. And the first day we ride through Massachusetts towards Bear State or Bear Brook Park,
Yeah.
Bear Brook State Park.
It's in Baldwinville, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken.
Spend the night there, and then the next day we cross the border into Vermont, go through Brattleboro, and stop in some town I don't remember.
A cute town in Vermont.
A cute town in Vermont.
There are so many.
There are a lot.
It has a state park though, which makes it extra cute. Yeah, and then the next 2 days we continue riding through Vermont. Eventually we stop in Burlington for the night, which is a kind of a nice break to get back
Yeah.
into civilization after 4 days of riding.
And it's
Yeah,
in the woods.
Perfect place to
Burlington's great
celebrate.
too.
Yes.
And one of the things I love about Burlington is Church Street. Like, I'm such a big proponent of pedestrian walks. I mean, I feel like this whole square should just be all people walking and biking.
Well, that was a proposal at one point, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
That would have
Yeah.
been interesting to
Oh,
see if
sure
Somerville
would've.
had tried to make that happen.
Yeah, it would have put it a great deal much more on the map. I feel like people travel all over the world, from all over the world, to just be able to walk about
Yeah.
without being, in fear of 4,000 pounds of metal
Yeah,
just whipping by you.
yeah.
Burlington is a great example.
Burlington
of that.
is great, yeah.
I do like. We have our friend Mo here. Who
Mo's
also
here. Mo's in the audience.
Mo's in the
Yeah.
audience. I remember walking down to Ben and Jerry's with her late at night when we were in Burlington last year, and that was fantastic. I think there's something really celebratory about arriving in Burlington. It's exciting. It's the day before we then have to get out to Montreal, which is a 100-mile stretch between Burlington and Montreal,
Very
which is
flat
also
100
very
miles.
flat. It's
the
fantastic.
easiest 100 miles you ride.
Oh, is
ever.
it very
Oh,
flat?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely the easiest 100 miles you can possibly probably ride, and it's beautiful. It's full of. I mean, the entire ride is beautiful. It's one of the reasons why we do this. In addition to raising lots and lots of money for the BCU, it's an incredible ride.
Yeah.
We said we go through Vermont. We're going through the mountains, Green Mountains. Lots of little mountain passes. Lots of going through the woods. We also added an element last year where, if you want, you can stay on mostly paved roads and go down the streets. But we also have adventure routes, and I think this year we're going to have multiple tiers of adventure routes.
No,
which
really? That's
I,
fun.
I think so, yeah. So some will take you through, trails that are just packed dirt or maybe a little bit of gravel. Others will take you through, apparently, logging paths that no one has actually checked to see if you can ride through, as I learned last year.
Ah, okay.
But that turned into bike and hike situations sometimes. But it's gorgeous, and so I have no problem carrying my bike sometimes if I'm walking through the woods.
And so, what's the demographic here? How many, the males and females? How many people are taking this trip? How many?
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
Because this year we actually, I'm not sure if we did this last year to make sure that we had a good division, but this year we've been focused a lot on that. So I believe it's half and half now, male female.
I haven't looked recently, but it's close to 40,
And
50%.
is it predominantly? I find is bicycling? I don't know. Demographically speaking, I want to know. is it a predominantly white? Do you have any Africans on your cyclist
We have
team, or
yeah,
any
we have
Asians? Any-
people of different races
You do?
on this ride. That was one of the goals to make sure that it was more inclusive. The scholarships too were geared toward that as well. Yes, we were trying to get a better mix than we have before. You can only do so much with, of course, the demographic makeup of Boston itself, but we did outreach as much as we could to try to make sure that the word got out there to communities that we haven't been able to really, I guess, penetrate. You could say.
Yeah.
The PCU, actually, I can mention along with that, one of our focuses for the following year, a lot of our initiatives will have not just not racist, but anti-racism aspects to it. So we're going to be focusing a lot on access, a lot on communities that we haven't been able to tap. One of the goals of getting a new community organizer is going to be to get to those communities that we haven't been able to access before, because we have now a good established base of members, approximately around 2,000, maybe, I believe it's around 2,000 right now, that come from a lot of the central neighborhoods of Boston, Allston, Brighton, of course, Somerville is a big one as well, Jamaica Plain. So we want to get down to those neighborhoods that we we feel like we haven't had enough presence in.
I also think that's where the Bike to Market program, which originally started at the BCU, has really evolved over the past couple of years, because we've specifically pushed it into neighborhoods where there's just not the social class ability to pay for bike maintenance and good bikes, and or they're just not bike shops. They're these deserts where people are not able to get their bikes fixed, and so we explicitly try to push these markets into these areas. I think Ashmont in particular, Mattapan. I don't know if we have one. Well, I mean, the shop is in Dorchester, Dudley Square.
The shop's in our office is in Dudley Square. That's another service that we offer, a shop that has normal shop hours, and we also offer lessons there, and sometimes actually do full-blown like bike maintenance days, where we will invite people and try to get a group of people to come so we can teach them all the rudimentary basics of keeping your bike in order. So a lot of the money that we raise from this is going to go directly to that. And as Matt had pointed out, the margins for us are much better than anything like Climate Ride is. So most of this money is going directly to BCU to do the work that we are doing. Actually, I think that anything that's not our overhead for the ride goes to the BCU, and our overhead is pretty darn low. I'm not sure how much we spent on food and just the campsites. A few vehicles that we have for
Expenses
support.
were like 15 to 20% of the whole
that's
ride.
great.
Yeah.
Good.
Brilliant.
And is this something, are you in touch with other unions around the country? Is this ever anything that you do in collaboration with other unions to?
We are in touch with other unions and co-ops and collectives, whatever they might call themselves. But
Velo Montreal, is that what it
yes, yeah, oh, well, that's okay. That's a
huge
really
deal,
big
right?
one.
Yeah.
One of the things that we do when we're up there, actually, we get in touch with Velo Montreal. They are their big bike union. And we actually, one of our board members, Peter Firth, I should say Dr. Peter Firth, he is a professor over at Northeastern in infrastructure and urban development. He is in touch with some of the people at the University of Montreal, I believe it is. Yeah.
Or McGill.
McGill, okay, that was it. Wait, is it McGill? It
I
is.
think it's McGill, yeah.
Okay. Where they actually put on a seminar for us. They shared some of their, they had graduate students and a couple of professors share some of their research with us on infrastructure design and changing bike situation there. We also had elected officials come in and tell us a little bit, or some people who had just become elected officials or were fighting to become elected officials too, tell us about the political landscape and how they have moved things there and what a struggle it's been for them. Then they actually took us on a tour of the city to show us some of the hot spots, some of the major areas that they've had success in changing, and I think a few of the areas that they were still working on trying to change, if I remember correctly. I didn't go on the full tour.
No, that's okay, but this sounds like, it sounds to me that just everyone is becoming hyper conscious and aware of the importance of safe, safety for bicyclists. I mean, talk a little bit about that, Matt.
Well, as I say, there's two parts to it. Safety is a big part, but also the streets of Boston are becoming increasingly more congested year after year. Like, our city is growing at a rapid rate, like number 2 or 3 in terms of congestion in the country, I think behind LA and the Bay Area. And you can try and make the roads bigger or fit more cars in there, but it's just not a sustainable solution. You've got so many, able-bodied young people here with who can go from A to B in 10 to 30 minutes
Oh,
on a
easily.
bike easily. And I don't know. I think all of us in this room like commute by bike,
Yeah.
and it's the most sensible way to get around. And by making it more accessible and safer for everyone of all ages and areas in the city, like you're just going to reduce congestion everywhere. And I think that's one of the biggest goals
Yeah.
of the BCU as well,
And
as safety.
the people on the ride, not all these people are hardcore endurance riders. Matt and I have been riding for a few years now, and I guess, I mean, even when I joined the ride, for instance, I wasn't a long distance rider, but I still rode more than your average human being.
Mm-hmm.
But we have lots of people who have no experience riding long distances or riding up and down mountains who do this ride. And both years that we've done it so far, people have had a great freaking time, and no one's had trouble. And in fact, we have been training them to do it, and it's been a joy to hear after each training ride, oh my God, that's the longest I've ever ridden in one sitting.
Yeah.
I loved it. I can't wait for next time. People are getting pumped for it, and I think that kind of enthusiasm is infectious, and I hope that combining the enthusiasm with a little bit more knowledge, with a little bit of experience riding around a city that has really focused on better infrastructure for bikers, that they'll come back and they'll share that with their friends and their family.
They're almost forced to by fundraising, right? Like
Well,
that's
Yeah.
a key part of the fundraising
Yeah.
is reaching out and describing your story and your motivations and what you're hoping to accomplish with this organization
Sure.
through your fundraising. And
Actually, like my entire office has heard, this is my third year of me going up to them. First, very through our little Slack and chatting about it, and then going up to them directly and being like, hey, give me money, this is what's going on if you don't know it. And now it's turned to do a thing where I've got a few more people biking in every day to the office. And I'm going to be leading some convoys for people who are very unfamiliar with the concept. They're going to be meeting me in Harvard Square, and we're going to be riding out to Watertown together. Sort of similar to actually what I think was happening just this morning, because today was the National Bike to Work Day, I believe it was. And
Oh.
so Becca and Katie are
Mhm.
current membership person. Sorry, Katie, for forgetting your title. That's so on me. And some of our board members and other volunteers were down at City Hall this morning, getting free coffee, talking to people about what we're doing, signing people up.
Yeah.
Ooh, actually, on that point too, another plug.
Yeah.
If you sign up or even just donate to the Boston Cyclists Union this month, which is Bike Month, May is always Bike Month, you will be put into a raffle for a free bike that is being donated to us by Wheelworks, the Belmont and Somerville Wheelworks. So
Very nice.
yeah, I'm doing a small thing with my coworkers who are now a little bit more engaged, just because I wouldn't shut up about bikes and how great it is and how sensible it is. And since we're out in Watertown, there's fewer public transportation options, and everybody hits the traffic. So
Mhm.
hopefully this will get some of them hooked.
Yeah, I mean, it's just good this time of year. Who doesn't want to be out getting good exercise, getting to where you need to be in the city quicker than you would if you were in a car, oftentimes? What kind of, I guess let's talk a bit about bicycles too. So what kind of bicycles are you taking on this long trip? Do you have several bicycles that you switch out? And I'm just curious. I personally love mountain biking, but I don't cycle around the city. I just walk everywhere and take public transportation because it is a bit nerve-wracking. And so, yes, I'm just curious, what kind of bicycle do you use on the
Well,
streets of Boston?
So I'm a former bike messenger from downtown, where I got into fixed gear biking. Single speed, for those of you who don't know what a fixed gear is, you pedal forward, it goes forward, you pedal backwards, it goes backward. So I use it as my mechanism of braking as
Mhm.
well, just pushing back, and I have one brake for the front wheel. That was the only bike that I owned. The first year I did Boston Real, so I did it on a fixed gear, which is very difficult on mountains because you can't shift.
Yeah.
And thankfully I had some experience with biking, so I was able to keep up most of the time, and I also had a great team of people who kept me motivated whenever I was starting to feel quite worn out. And I told myself that I would never do it again, but then I did it last year on the fixed gear, and it looks like I'm doing it this year again on the fixed gear. It might be my last year on the fixed gear doing this. I'm getting old, but I have a geared bike as well, which I mainly reserve for mixed terrain riding and all that.
There's
I
gonna be a
feel
ton
very
of that this
fortunate
year.
too. I know.
Mixed terrain.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what those extra little segments are.
Or
he's
adventure
talking about.
segments.
Adventure segments.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really, it's so far it's worked, and
Mhm.
it's really fun. I take it as a particular challenge for myself, and then I sweat a lot and grown a lot probably.
I wonder what sparked, and I don't know that we touched on this, what sparked, so how long again has Boston Cyclist Union been a full-on union?
It's been in existence since about 2011. It's been a nonprofit since about 2012, I believe. is
What was
when
it that
got announced.
sparked that?
Simply the need for, if you can remember Boston about 10 years ago, there were barely even sharrows on the ground, on the roads. And bike lanes, especially even the main thoroughfares like Comm Ave, did not exist. There was nothing, basically, and a lot of us were fed up with it. It was aggravating, and there were small unions or collectives popping up here and there throughout some of the neighborhoods. I remember when I moved back to Boston in 2009, there was an Alston Brighton bike collective, but no formal structure and no sustainable system or code of laws that would keep it going. No way of making money or having more political clout. So it was actually Pete Stidman and Noel Yanka and a few others who decided, let's coalesce with this and make it into an actual nonprofit that will have some clout. And from then on, they got a bunch of different board members with similar ideals, even if we had very different approaches, together in a room, and thus the BCU was born.
And talk a little bit, I'm seeing here there's this Golden Cog Award. What is that all about? Talk about that.
So we used to have a couple of parties a year. Now we have one party a year, but don't worry, we have lots of events. And we like to honor local businesses that have put an effort into making themselves bike friendly in one way or another, or making the surrounding area bike friendly. One famous winner is Aeronaut down the street, for instance, which has done a lot for the bike union. It's from everything from providing beer, and actually it just reminds me I have to go to talk to them today and try to get beer for the trip, because what bike trip would be complete without? But they also offer space, and they offer support through their own connections, and they're thus very deserving of the award. Hosting Bike Talk on a monthly basis there. They had our bike kickoff event at the beginning of this month, and they allow us, I think, to make connections with a Zone 3 in Alston, for instance, where they host Aeronaut Alston. So that's the kind of business that we consider when we're trying to figure out who to give the Golden Cog Award to. There are also individual members, that's right, as well.
Yeah, I was just seeing Volunteer of the Year, Reverend Laura Everett. While we wish she never had to do it, bicycling Reverend Laura Everett is the glue that holds the bike community together every time there's a fatal crash involving a person biking.
Yeah, we look for individuals like that who they touch multiple communities. She, for instance, has brought together some of my former colleagues, the bike messengers, with people who would never have talked to a bike messenger before, perhaps. But in the very unfortunate event of a bicyclist being killed on our streets, she is first and foremost there to help bring people together, inspire the community to make a show of strength and some strength as a community, support for each other. And if you see the white bikes around town, around the city, ghost bikes, they are sometimes called, that's usually because she and a small committee of people that she works with have made sure that was the case as a memoriam.
What do you find is often the bike crashes that happen all over the city? What do you find is often what's the result of many of them?
The result it depends on which area you're looking at. Like
cause, rather, of the cause.
Well, cause is largely large trucks.
Yeah.
Like 18-wheelers, large trucks are almost always the cause for fatal accidents.
Large trucks on tiny streets.
Yep. And in terms of results, I know Boston has an immediate action committee or something. They have
Yeah.
they have something in place to make changes very short term after crashes, which is a little frustrating for people in the community because we are proactively telling them this is dangerous.
Yeah.
This intersection is dangerous and has been dangerous for years. Please
Yeah.
fix it. Please fix it. And unfortunately, a lot of that action doesn't happen until someone's been killed. That said, they do make improvements after fatal accidents happen.
Are there any off the top of your head now, just intersections that come to mind that are dangerous that need to be addressed? You know,
Let's see what.
all of the world is watching. Mayor Joe Curtatone loves this show.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
I'll give Mayor Joe major props because Somerville's done a great job at making some good changes. I
It
mean,
has. It
Union
really
Square
has.
alone.
A Union Square alone. It's just
Yeah.
so clear.
I will say Porter Square needs some serious rethought.
Yeah.
There's a couple different designs there on how to improve it, and it's a really challenging intersection because you've got a lot of different entries and streets and traffic coming from different directions.
Strange light patterns,
Yeah.
unclear markings, and that's why a few weeks ago, this wasn't officially organized by the BCU, I believe, but it was definitely organized by a few different groups and concerned citizens, including, I believe, Cambridge Bike Safety, where they formed a human barricade to block off the bike lane to make a very kind of stunning display of just how greatly we care about each other's lives and
Did
the need for improvement there.
They didn't block traffic, right? They
No,
just
they do
created,
not-
They
they do
created a
not block
barrier
traffic.
to enforce the
Where the
sensitivity of the bike lane.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Because oftentimes we see cars trying to either pass other cars or
Oh,
just dropping even people off.
Yes.
It's very, very dangerous.
It's actually a very recent problem with
Yeah.
cycling over the past three years is
Yeah.
the rideshare services and their
Ah,
impact
yes, yes.
on bike lanes, and it's
Yeah.
just ubiquitous now across the city. You just see people double parked, picking up and dropping off fares.
Yeah.
You know,
All the
one solution I've been kind of subtly pushing is I would love to see the cities, the greater Boston area, put dedicated rideshare spots right behind all bus stations or bus stops. Just one car, two cars wide maybe,
Yeah.
where these programs can incentivize riders and drivers to pick off and walk and drop off at these locations, and
It's a
create
great idea.
it's a great example of
Yeah.
smarter infrastructure design.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I'm also, this brings to mind that around this time last year, we lost a community member, Rick Archer. He was
Yes.
killed on Com Ave. Not a truck incident, but a young speeder incident.
I think alcohol was involved.
And I think alcohol is involved, unfortunately. That inspired, that brought a lot of communities together, and the memorial for that actually happened to coincide with the Boston Transportation's budgetary planning meeting, and we turned it into a memorial ride that went to City Hall, where it was over 100 people sat in for that meeting, including not only filling the city chambers but the overflow space, where we became a very active voice there, and we actively participated. And actually, that meeting, this year's meeting, is happening next Tuesday. The BCU, of course, is planning on being there in force and encouraging members to come to share stories and to give the city more reason to increase the budget for bike transportation, so that the BTD can feel more empowered to help make changes. Because we understand that they are working with limited resources, but we are full of ideas, and we believe that they need support, so we are there to show ours and to give them some good things to consider.
Yes, of course. Who's been I know Mike Connolly has been very involved. I
Mhm.
mean, there's been a lot of politicians that are,
Yep.
Denise Provost, Pat Jalen, they're all
Michelle
just,
Wu.
Michelle
Michelle
Wu. Yeah, they've been really supportive in all of this stuff that you're trying to streamline.
Yeah, good job for giving them props. They
Yeah, yeah.
they definitely deserve it.
They do.
We're very happy to have them on our side. There are other members too at higher levels in the state. For instance, Senator Williams Brownsberger, who actually joined us on the first day of last year's Fosterall.
Oh,
he
wow.
rode out with us.
He also had something to do with the criminal reform that just passed, didn't you not?
I believe so, but I
Yeah,
couldn't confirm
Brownsberger.
that. I'd have to
Yeah.
go back and look.
That's great. That's good. So talk about internship. How does someone that's want to get, if someone's interested in getting involved with the Boston Cyclist Union?
That's
you could
good
just
call.
send an email.
You could just
Send
send
an
an
email,
email.
yeah.
But I can, we're always looking for volunteers for
Yeah.
lots of things. And in fact, there's one of the things that we've been focusing on this year are doing what I've been referring to as the Tour Does. For instance, we have Tour de Fête. That's a small ride and celebration that's being promoted. It's actually in conjunction with, I should say, the BCU is joining up with New Belgium Brewing to do this event that New Belgium Brewing does all around the country. And that's coming up in August, and we need lots and lots of volunteers for that. People to help register people. There's going to be a concert. The band that's going to be headlining, I believe, is called The Voids. I'm not familiar with them, but I believe they are a brainchild of somebody who was in the Strokes. But yeah, so we need lots of volunteers for like small things like that, and other rides that we'll be having throughout the summer, and our parties, and for all sorts of things that we do. And that can be anybody. Anybody can write us, go to our Facebook page, become a member. You don't even have to be a member to volunteer, but why not become a member as well? But then internships, these are where we try to offer people who have specific skills a chance to use those skills to help us with our mission and to develop a few things. That could be anything from working in the more political realm with Becca and talking to politicians. It could be urban planners or other data analysts who are working either in GIS or other stats programs, or creating surveys, or going out and assisting with bike counts, the many different community bike groups that there are out there. For instance, Somerville Bike Safety, or Cambridge Bike Safety, the Somerville Bike Committee, working with them in almost a partnership capacity. Lots of different things that people can do. And
That's great.
yeah.
You've got my mind is stirring, because I think, well, I've been thinking about doing a ride for reparations. I raise reparations in white communities that goes toward the African People's Education and Defense Fund to help build economic development and self-determination in black communities that have been sabotaged economically and politically by the white ruling class and white class in general. And so I thought a ride for reparations. And I would totally need your guidance on that, as far as, because you've done now, I mean, how long have you've been cycling? What's your longest trip? I mean, you've done it. Haven't you done a cross country, or?
That guy's done.
You've done a cross country twice,
Yeah.
did you say? Was that?
No, once.
Just
Oh,
once.
once, okay.
Might do
Talk
a second time this year.
Talk about that. I mean, I'm just so curious, how, I mean, obviously it takes months of planning. Is there any, you just did it, okay.
He's exceptional.
Yeah, I'm just
you
so
just
interested.
you put your bike in a box and you fly to the other coast, and then you bring some camping gear and put it on your bike and get a route and ride back.
And what route do you just go straight down the middle? Do you go down south, up
so
north?
I borrowed a route from actually somebody I met on Bostrial for the west part of the country.
Yeah.
Went through maybe 17 or 18 national parks, which was
That's
absolutely incredible. Started in Astoria, Oregon, and just went east through Oregon and Idaho and Wyoming, South Dakota, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, Massachusetts.
What were some of the challenges along the way?
Well, you got a bike every day.
Yeah.
Challenging for some people, I guess.
Right.
I had to get back for work in time, so I had to maintain a 100-mile-a-day pace, which can get a little strenuous day after day for 6 weeks.
Did you meet
so
anyone
cool.
else along the way, as far as
I
other-
did. I actually met somebody who was going to school at Tufts,
Wow.
a woman who I actually saw later, like months later, or in Davis Square, just popping around. I recognized her watermelon helmet. And,
The
like,
watermelon helmet.
yeah.
Yeah. Sounds around.
Yeah, it was pretty distinct. But highly recommend it. Did it by myself.
What does a trip like that cost, roughly?
Well, it really depends on how much of the gear you have already, how far in advance you book your tickets, how willing you are to sleep on the ground. I mean, if you wanted to be frugal about it, you could do it for under $1,000. The airfare being the biggest part of that, and then just stopping at grocery stores to pick up food, keeping fuel canisters, like camping stove.
And lots of Subway.
Well, that's Subway might rack your budget up. I ate a lot of Subway.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, it's a food desert in the middle of the country. Like, you just,
It is.
for healthy, at least reasonably healthy food options that are not meat or grease or just potatoes. Subway was reliable and consistent and didn't make me feel like crap.
And getting to know along the way, just traveling through different states, it must have been kind of an interesting state to state, passing through
Yeah.
the borders, what the just politics and the food deserts, as you said.
Idaho was interesting to me in particular because I think in our community a lot of the times you associate truck drivers with a little more disdain for bicyclists and being more aggressive. But in Idaho, the majority of the truck drivers had bicycles in the back of their trucks, like crazy mountain bikes, and so they were pretty chill. They they gave you plenty of passing room and weren't rushing you or anything.
That's nice.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fun trip, and honestly, this Boss Trail ride is what kind of inspired me to do that. I had not ridden more than maybe 40 miles before the first year of Boss Trail, and in that first year of Boss Trail, I did the last day, or in that case, the first day was the Century. It was the first time I did a 100-mile ride. 2 weeks later, we did a 135-mile ride for
That's
our
right.
friend's birthday out to Provincetown.
I saw the photographs. I was going to show the audience at home. I'm sorry, I'm having some trouble with showing the photos, but maybe I could edit these and edit them in at a later time. But they're beautiful.
Yeah.
It just shows your travel and just all
Lots
the places
and
you've
lots of
been
greenery.
and the people. Yeah.
Lots
the
of
right-
smiling people.
It's the right time of year to go. Like it's
Yeah.
just everything is so lush and green, and you probably have the best weather. Hopefully, last year was a little rainy. The first year was wicked hot.
Yeah.
So this year's going to be just right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that would be divine. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't like. No matter what, it's most likely going to be bearable. But yeah, no, I agree. I just want to add on to like what Matt said. I was inspired to start riding longer distances after that as well. There's a culture now, I feel, that's growing of bike packing, which is what Matt did for across the country and what I've done a few times with some friends, where you strap everything you need to the bike. And for instance, after last year's Boss Trail, a few friends and I rode from New York City up to Boston on a kind of circuitous route. But the great thing about the Boss Trail ride is that it's supported, so they carry all your camping gear with them in the vehicles. All we need to worry about is carrying a few tubes and some snacks that sustain us throughout the day. And then we have lunches basically set out for us, fruits, sandwiches, peanut butter and jelly. And Matt here helps plan out the food so that we have pretty excellent dinners that are cooked, mostly cooked ahead of time, prepared ahead of time, and then cooked at the campsites each night. So after a long day of riding, we can all sit together around the campfires, help cook the meals, clean the meals up, and just enjoy our time,
Yeah.
relax in
And
the woods.
so, how has bicycling changed your life and your moods, your relationships?
Substantially.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
Big time.
I've been biking since I was a child, and I would say in elementary school years, I was pretty fortunate. Our mother, my brother and I, were allowed to ride to elementary school, which I think was a big deal for our parents to kind of let go and be like, fine, you can ride your bike. Given
same
this is in rural Connecticut where, most of our riding was on trails to school. Like we were close enough where we could stay off the roads.
Mine was in less rural Connecticut,
Yeah.
where I was riding up Route 5 every day, which I
jeez.
don't know why my parents let me
Allowed
do
you to do that, yeah.
But I'm glad they did, because it taught me that you can actually get places on a bike.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know I just don't know how to answer that question, because I wouldn't be living the life I'd be living if I didn't.
I mean, from a lineage point of view, I definitely attribute that being able to commute to school in
Yeah.
elementary school, recognizing, oh, I can get places
Yeah.
on these wheels.
Right.
And and then again in college, just being able to live off campus and get to class, and from there, I just turned to commuting to work around the city, and meeting people, and then it became more recreation and a lifestyle, and recognizing how much of a positive impact it has on your mood and your fitness.
Yes, of
Thing
course.
it made the cities smaller. It brings everything together. things that would otherwise be a very long or cumbersome drive or a process.
Union Square in particular, I think,
Yeah.
is super hard to get to. It's a pain to get to from
Yeah.
any of the trains. Like
Yeah.
you know, if you were to get
It's a great example. actually.
from my house to here, you know, by public transit, it'd probably be an hour and a half, maybe. You know, but by bike, it's 37 minutes.
And for me, I'm just up the road. I wouldn't actually. I'm not sure what I guess I would have walked here if I hadn't been riding here. But I can ride here in like
Yeah.
7 minutes, which is fantastic from near Ball Square.
Yeah.
But then I was actually just thinking about this and writing one of our friends this morning. I don't know why it became like a recreation thing where I think that just doing this with your legs for over 100 miles is a fun thing to do, but it is. Just really is.
Were there fears that you had, you know, in the beginning that have been disproved? Fears of bicycling, like some people will say, well, you know, it might be quicker for me to get to work on a bicycle, but I feel safer in a car. Or
Most
Just
people
to
say
speak
that.
towards that, I certainly remember college, first year of college, riding bike to class and just being terrified and actually appreciating that because it woke me up better than coffee could ever wake me up.
Yeah.
You know, you're just rolling out of bed at 7 in the morning for a class and being thrown into, you know, traffic and needing to be alert and needing to be aware
Yeah.
and conscientious of everything that's around you, how everything is moving, you know, traffic patterns, things like that. You know, it is a little terrifying.
Yeah.
But after doing it in the city for nearly 12 years now, it's almost become very zen, like a form of meditation. Just like even just riding through the streets, just floating through traffic. Just the years of experience are just hardwired into your mind, where you don't even think about it. You just kind of see how everything is going to unfold, including all the dumb things that drivers do. It's like,
The,
almost you can-
the dumb ways that humans behave.
Yeah.
We're fairly predictable creatures.
Yeah.
And learning to see those and to see what might happen ahead and before it happens is, I think one of the best things I've learned from biking. I've also been humbled, though, a lot. I've been hit a few times. I've broken my hip. I have 2 metal wrists. One was just from last September, 2 Septembers ago, where I'm reminded that I can still be surprised in really big ways. So it's it kicks my ass a little bit. It is meditative, and it also still reminds me to be very, very aware and pay attention to the context of everything around me.
yeah, sure. I mean, the hyper reality of all that's going on around you with this while you're bicycling. Share a special story of a bicycling, a moment that you had, you know, a time in the past where you've, you know, a blissful moment, a funny moment, just
Does
any
this past
kind of
weekend count?
Oh God.
Yeah, talk about it.
Yeah.
So we built a tight group of friends from this first year, this Boss Trail ride. We kind of gave ourselves a name based on some of our
Particular riding.
riding and life
style.
habits. And this past weekend was the first time in a very long time where all of us had managed to get together on a trip. And
I think it
went-
might have literally been the first time the entire team was
Yeah,
riding together.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just because the way it works, you know, organizing events, somebody's always got something going on, wedding, work trip, whatever.
Yeah.
But this worked out, which was fortunate because 2 people are moving far
Yes.
away. And we spent the weekend in Acadia, which I don't know if you've been before.
No,
It's
I haven't.
in Maine. It's a
Yeah.
national park, absolutely beautiful. But just incredible riding, really good weather, good company.
We probably got, according to one of our team members who's been there a number of times recently, he hadn't seen such beautiful and clear weather any of the times that he's been there. And it was actually even supposed to be overcast or rainy on Saturday, and it wasn't. But we got to ride on a beautiful paved road all around Acadia. We got to ride through trails up mountains, including Cadillac Mountain, which most of us did twice. Some of us did 3 times.
Cadillac Mountain, what's the elevation on that?
1,500.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, 1,500, which over about 3-something miles.
Yeah, that's a really nice climb
You just keep going,
if you
going.
like
going.
climbing.
Yeah.
Somewhere, I think all of us did it somewhere between like 20-ish to 50-ish minutes, depending on when we did it and how hard we wanting to do at that time. And then, of course, the descent, where some of us were hitting speeds, 35 to 40 miles an hour, which was beautiful. I woke up for sunrises, which I don't normally do, but it was glorious. And
Do you get a lot of insects in the face?
on
Depends.
my yeah.
I know I've gotten a fly in the mouth once.
Okay.
and
Oh
I-
yeah. You have to. That comes with the territory.
Yeah.
But not this
Yeah.
past weekend.
I think it's been too cold, so nothing's come out yet. But I will say on the Bostrial trip, there's a stretch.
That's right.
There's a stretch of
It's about 15 miles, I think.
yeah,
even.
it's a stretch of land. It's a private protected bike path.
on one of the smaller islands right outside the major
St.
Montreal
Lawrence
ride.
on the St. Lawrence.
There we go.
But at the time of year when we go there, it's what bug is it? Mayflies, maybe.
It's something like that.
All I know
Mayflies
is
are
they
nuts.
are reproducing aggressively everywhere. It like volumes
Yeah.
in
Good
your
to know,
face.
yeah,
You're
like a
basically going
cloud of
through
Yeah.
a
So-
haze of mating
Yeah.
flies.
So they don't bite you.
No.
They're not
Right,
biting
no,
you. They're just
sure.
in your hair and your mouth and your ears and your nose and your eyes
And everything.
everything.
That's a good point. We should remind the
Yeah.
new members of the larger team to
Bring a bandana.
bring bandanas
Definitely.
and sunglasses, because you
Yeah.
will be riding through 15 miles of bugs, making more bugs.
Yes. So we have 10 minutes left, and I just I want to talk a bit about this trip that's coming up and how
Yeah.
people can get involved and donate and contribute to this.
It's a really good point.
Yeah,
I wish
Where
I had a
should-
little sign that had our.
it's okay.
Well,
I
most
can
of us.
like add this to the thread. The thread below.
I mean, I'll say like I wouldn't worry about donating to people on this trip unless you know
Sure.
somebody who's going on it or
Yeah.
feel really inclined to pick us out from the pool. But like the website, the Boston Cyclist Union has a page to donate
Yeah.
if you are interested in contributing to the organization as a whole.
Yes.
I think in general, more than money, it just helps to have volunteers get
Yeah.
involved and just a presence in the community. Like there's absolutely truth and strength numbers here.
Yeah.
And the more people we get out there riding, like I'll say this, like the more, just ride your bike. Just ride your bike to work, just get out there riding. And the more people on the streets riding, the more our politicians will be forced to recognize us as a voting force and as people who, exist in these communities and get from A to B.
And it will become less scary.
Yeah.
Like I said, like you said, actually, a lot of people do bring that up. They say they're too scared to ride. They don't want to try it out. You start doing it one day, within a week, it's going to seem less scary. Within a month, even that much so. Within a year, you probably won't even know why you were so scared before.
10 years later, you'll be terrified to drive in the city.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's actually a very, very good point. Because I am.
Yeah,
That or
I
I
am
just-
too.
I-
I'm like, what am I doing?
Can't stand it. It's actually kind of ridiculous.
Slow and frustrating.
Oh my god, it's so
hard
bad.
to see where you are.
And instead, you could be enjoying life.
Yeah.
And people who are worried about cold and rain, no, you'll figure that out too. In fact, actually, even winter, we've recently done a winter survey where we learned that after 3 winters worth of riding, we see a shift where people suddenly become much more acclimated to it. They probably have accumulated gear over the years, and they are no longer afraid of even getting out there on icy or snowy days. So yeah, just ride. But also, I should mention that if you are interested in becoming a BCU member, I believe our membership is now $36, $25 for students
Okay.
and low income. And like I said, if you do it this month, you get entered into the free bike raffle. But yes, if you do know members on the team, there are still some who are trying to raise to their minimum. BCU, we do have a page for the Bostrial, and it might connect to our classy.org page
Great.
where we are raising our funds.
Great, that's so exciting. I'm so happy that you both were able to come on to talk about this.
Yeah.
And so I guess then what you'd like to see happen around the U.S. to make it, better for bicyclists. What are some things that you'd like to see just to, in general, so people riding more is one, just getting a bike and riding more. But what would you like to see as an overall national policy pushed?
What I'd like to see is gas prices to go up.
Yeah.
Like, because, I know that really is detrimental to a lot of people, but it makes people make different decisions, right? Or if
Yeah.
it's $5 a gallon versus $2.10, right? You're going to be like, well, maybe I'll live closer to where I work, or I will, commute certain parts of the week by bike. I certainly noticed huge differences. What was it, 8 years ago, maybe,
When the
when the prices were so high.
Yeah, a lot
and-
more people were
The
biking.
recession.
Yeah, But like in terms of policy and community, and I think a lot of the younger generations now are recognizing this wasn't mentioned before, but the impact of climate change. Caused climate change is huge, and it's going to be hugely problematic. And this is just one other way to help mitigate your impact on our environment.
I'd also like to see the normalization of bike culture and bikers through earlier education, and including it more in when we're talking about society, how people get around, what's normal in grade schools. I know that the impact of that might not be for another few decades, but if we start now teaching children that it's a normal thing to ride, that biking is a normal part of transportation, that they use the roads, that they're part of the community and the society that they live in, I think that will have major ramifications throughout our society and just our culture in time that will stick.
Mm-hmm. And how can law enforcement improve? Is around that. I'm just curious, what's your take on just law enforcement in general, how they've been supportive, or also just the challenges?
2 parts in that. One, they should persecute people when they kill bikers and they have broken laws. Mm-hmm. And that's a really sore spot right now, because the Anita Kerman investigation was concluded that it was her fault despite video evidence of the truck driver breaking multiple laws. And I think that it's a contentious issue in the bike community right now, because there are a lot of people who don't want to open up old wounds, and they don't want to make a fuss about it, and they don't want to be punitive. And I don't think, I certainly am not interested in ruining somebody's life. I'm not interested in causing more pain. What I am interested in is acknowledgement that we have laws, they were broken, someone was killed. Just issue a fine. You broke this law, you're not supposed to turn from the outermost lane. Mm-hmm. Here's the fine, and then laws, violations like that at that intersection for these large trucks can potentially influence infrastructure improvements, right? If we've got these large trucks that are forced to, take multiple lanes to make their turns, maybe there should be either no trucks there, or maybe there should. And what I would really love to see, this is a little bit of a tangent. In Europe, a lot of the urban centers, they prevent 18-wheelers, and you are forced to make deliveries with, box trucks, smaller, vans that you might see, windowless vans that are certain length wide, and that has huge impact on reducing fatal collisions with bikes, because you just don't have these massive vehicles that have huge blind spots, large turning radiuses, multiple, what do you call them, actuating wheels.
Trying to go through tiny streets in dense city centers, which Boston is one of the densest and one of the whiniest.
Cow paths, just cow paths.
There, just cow paths.
How many people died in 2017? How many cyclists in Boston?
7, maybe.
Do you feel there's a decline, or an increase, or has it been
I don't know.
steady?
I would have to look at the numbers.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at the numbers too. I think, if I remember correctly, I think there's been decline in deaths, but injuries. There's still many more injuries than there should be.
As you
There's still
said,
many
with
more
the
deaths than there should be.
increase in all of these luxury developments going up everywhere, it'll be nice when Union Square does get the green line, because I feel like it'll definitely help with keeping cars off the road.
Yeah, no, we've been involved in that. The BCU is not anti-car by any means. We are just multimodal and smarter transportation.
Yeah, multimodal is a great way for people to get involved in this too.
Multimodal. What's
Modal.
Modal?
So a great example is if you live past the end of the red or orange line, instead of driving your car to a parking lot and then taking the orange line, you would ride your bike to the parking lot and leave your bike parked there.
Taking advantage of all the public access ways and better bike lanes to get yourself where you need to go.
Frequently what we do is, if we want to get really far out, we'll take the commuter rail on the weekends with our bikes, and then we'll bike around somewhere else further away, or bike back to the city, and it just kind of enables us to do more and go further, and but while at the same time still having that
and get
bike
out of
with
Boston.
us. Get out of Boston.
Is it a law to wear a helmet? Is that a law in Massachusetts?
I think it's for under 18.
Under 18.
Children have to wear a helmet. But one thing that people don't realize a lot that actually would probably help in many cases is it is a law to you have to have bike lights after dusk.
Oh, good to know.
Yes.
You're supposed to have reflectors too, but that's. I mean, the way I see it is if you have lights, reflectors are less
Yeah.
They're oftentimes
Essential.
reflectors in the lights.
Yeah.
Reflecting.
I really love, for those of you in Somerville and Union Squares, but I mean just in Somerville in general, you'll see, I don't know if it's once a month, but that Skull Crew
Yeah.
from Artisans Asylum
Yeah.
riding around with their 20-foot tall bicycles with lights and
Lots of
boom
lights.
boxes. It's just great.
Same thing with Bike Party,
Yeah.
which is actually another brainchild of John Ramos and Greg Hum and a few others. Those groups have been doing, I think, a great job at promoting how fun
Yeah.
this can be.
They're a much better evolution of the critical mass effort, which
Yeah.
was a lot more combative
Yeah.
and aggravating. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I think
I
it
am, yeah, a bit.
started in New York, maybe.
I think it's New York, yeah.
But it was groups of bicyclists who would clog intersections and arterial ways to be antagonizing and to
Yeah.
make us a point. Whereas these organizations like Skull and Bike Party, they do end up clogging the streets, but they're having fun going from A to B and partying and boisterous and moving and going places. They're not
It's
intentionally being antagonistic.
A joyous protest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
That's great.
going back to your point a little bit about enforcement,
Yeah.
are you familiar with Idaho stop laws?
No.
No. Okay. In Idaho, it is codified in their general legislate that bicycles are allowed to yield at stop signs and stop at stoplights. Which I don't know if you watch how people ride in the city, or I've ridden in the city. I would say 60 to 80% of the people ride that way here.
Yeah.
It's
Myself
it feels like a
included.
very natural way to ride.
Yes.
It's a natural way to ride, and it's safer. And I'd be happy to talk about the merits of that being safer. But it's interesting because the law enforcement, they certainly can ticket you for violating the driving laws while riding a bike. But a lot of them either don't, or they support Idaho stop laws because they recognize it also as being a safer way of riding.
It's true.
And
And
I've
that's
even
not, nothing, that doesn't hold here in Massachusetts. Okay.
no, it is not.
Fortunately not.
No.
No.
It's exclusive to Idaho.
Still, after all these years.
But I like to bring it up because I think it's proof that it can work, and
Yeah.
it could be, codified here in Massachusetts, and it would.
I also personally agree with this. I'm just as a PCU board member. I'm not saying that we collectively agree with that. But yeah, it's a smart way. Bikes are, you're in a much more dangerous position when you're starting and stopping. Being able to treat stop signs as yields can go a long way to keeping people safe.
Wow. Well, it has been such a lovely pleasure having the two of you on the show to talk about this. I look forward to getting a follow-up when you return home from your trip. Okay.
Great.
And thank you, folks, for tuning in at home. We're off on Channel 3, but on Facebook, we'll definitely have them on the show again to talk about their experience and just to kind of keep everyone up to date with what's going on in the Boston Cyclists Union. So get out, ride more, be safe doing it. I highly recommend for those tuning in, if you're interested in something, interested in the U.S. spy agency that's being built right now in the Black community of St. Louis, there is a live webinar. They'll be discussing it. I believe it starts now. It's on a Huru Solidarity Movement page, and I highly recommend you check that out if you want to discover more. All right, thank you so much again for
Thanks,
being on the
Valerie.
show, and I look forward to having you on. Okay,
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
thanks. Cool. That's a wrap. Hey, thanks, audience.
That was great.